From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast, and I'm your host, Melissa Morgan. This is an interesting case this week that I am not really wanting to talk about for a lot of reasons, but before we do, I have to say a special thank you to Rose Lily Violet, who left a lovely review. Sometimes the concise reviews are the ones that, get you. And on Apple Podcasts, she said the title of her review is Great Pod. And she said, everything about this pod is wonderful. That's the review. And I mean, really, what else is there to say? I mean, go on. I am so grateful for any reviews, ratings that you can take the time to give us, because that's how people find us, and we need some finding. I would be very grateful if you would leave a review or a rating on whatever streaming format you use. It means a lot to us. So I don't know why I keep saying us. It's like it's me and my other personality. Sometimes I guess it means Angelique and myself. I just am used to saying that because of Mark, but maybe I'll just pretend that he is, still here. I mean, I guess I can say he is still here with me. There are memories of him all around. I can not do this without, getting to look at his picture. So there's that. So there is a lot going on this week. I got several messages from Tip-Sters saying that the episode, I think it's 230, last week's episode about Connie Converse going missing, that her voice is atrocious. I get it. But come on, Tip-Sters. Dang. That's why there's 31 flavors from Baskin and Robbins. Some of you are mean girls and boys. I get it. Her voice is, not for everyone. So neither is Bob Dylan. Neither is Neil Young. I mean, come on. But it was still a fascinating story in my mind. And just to give you a little heads up, there is an episode that Angelique and I recorded a few weeks ago that we're holding off on because we are hopefully getting some additional information from a retired detective who actually worked on this case. And it's similar to Connie in that someone disappeared, still have no body. There is a debate whether he committed suicide, whether it was an accident and he could have fallen and just never been found. Seems pretty odd to me. Or if perhaps he stumbled upon something that was local and bad and he was murdered for it by either a gang or a few other of his brother deputies who may have been wrapped up in something bad. So it's a great case. As you can hear, there's a lot of interesting details, but we're holding off on that because I had a conversation with a detective this morning and he's considering whether he will be a guest. And if not, we will run with the episode that Angelique and I recorded. But this week you're stuck with just me, and that's going to have to be okay, my beloveds. A lot going on in the true crime world this week, which, actually every week there's a lot. But I mean, wow, this week, wow. I was invited by a lovely neighbor to see the film Where the Crawdads Sing, and I could not do it, just a scheduling conflict. And I didn't know a lot about it. I've heard a lot about it recently. And then boom, I've heard a lot more about it. So the author, Delia Owen, has written several best-selling books, and she is now wanted by prosecutors in South Africa for questioning and a murder. And you've probably seen something about it by now. But if you have not, it's pretty interesting. She and her husband, I believe his name was Mark. How could I forget that? My husband's name was Mark. So Delia and Mark moved to Africa as conservationists, and it was Delia's son from a previous relationship, I believe. His name was Christian or Christopher. They believe he's actually the shooter. So I don't know. I mean, these are just all allegations at this point, but it seems weird timing that the week that a film based on her book, is opening at the box office with a lot of cachet behind it in the form of Reese Witherspoon, who recommended the book as part of her book club group. And I think she's a producer on the book turned to film. It seems like weird timing to me. So in a nutshell, because I don't want to say, it's a long layered case. In 1996, an ABC film crew was shooting a documentary for the television show Turning Point, and Meredith Vieira was the host, and Diane Sawyer was like the anchor in the studio. And they were shooting this footage about Mark and Delia Owen, who, by the way, are divorced now, but are still apparently friendly and may live on the same property in Idaho in different dwellings. But off camera, but the camera was running, an alleged poacher was murdered. Now, I have not seen the episode, and I am... I mean, if any of you have seen the film where the crawdads sing, or the episode, I would love to know about it, because there was a fantastic article on Thursday in The Atlantic, and the author spared no details and pulled no punches. And he, is like, look, this happened, and they don't think Delia did it, and I don't even think they think Mark did it, but I think they assume her son did it. And I'm not saying a poacher of precious, maybe extinct animals doesn't need to take a dirt nap, but there are laws, even in, Zambia, and there is no statute of limitations on murder. So they are looking to talk to Delia and maybe Mark and maybe her son. And I don't, the cameraman, who every journalist has not named, which I think is a good thing, because he just was shooting footage. He said it was very disturbing, very emotional, and very upsetting. That's what he said. I would think no matter who it is, watching someone die in front of you is hard. And the theories are that his body was then airlifted by a helicopter, which that's how they caught a lot of poachers, is flying overhead, and dropped into a lagoon. And other people have said, in Africa, it's easy to get away with a crime like that because the animals eat the evidence. That's a horrifying thing right now, but I get it. And I just don't know how everybody isn't subpoenaed, like Meredith Vieira, because she was there, Diane Sawyer. I mean, I don't know how everybody, the cameraman, I don't know how everybody isn't, maybe they are being questioned, or maybe it's like an extradition issue because it happened in another country. I don't know. But if any of you have seen the movie, here's the other thing. Apparently the book, and then subsequently the movie, has a lot of coinky dinkies with what happened, with the actual event that happened in 1996. So maybe she writes best about, true experiences. So it's just an odd thing that it's about a murder. That's what I've been told. The book and the movie are about a murder in the kind of swamp regions. It's very similar. It sounds like a very similar thing. So if you know about this book, if you know about this film, I'd love to hear from you. And you can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us on the Tipster hotline. That's 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. You can send us a message on the JT Tipsters Facebook page, at JT Tipsters on Instagram, at JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter. I would love to hear from you because, I only know, as you can tell, a broad strokes, and I think I'm going to have to probably cover it because it's a little too interesting to not cover. So this week's case bothers me for a lot of reasons. It's terrible. It is the murder of a 25-year-old woman by a little bit older woman. I think she's in her mid-30s, who's a yoga teacher. So if you're new to this podcast, I'm Melissa Morgan, your host. Taught yoga for 16 years. I have practiced yoga for 23 years, 1999. And I taught for 16 until the pandemic. My last class I taught was March of 2020. And the yoga studios that I was teaching at, one of them closed for a while and then reopened, went from 4 rooms to 1 room. And the other larger corporate company I worked for, YogaWorks, literally filed for bankruptcy. So I know that they both have online classes, and I was asked to teach online classes, but yoga is a joy for me, and it is an in-person thing. I am grateful for computers and phones and smoke signals and anything where we can communicate with each other. I'm grateful for those things, but I hold steadfast to certain things needing to be in person, and yoga is just one. My best friend lives on the other side of the country, and I am so happy I get to talk to her. We usually have a coffee date. I call it, it's a talk date on the weekends at some point, and it is one of my life preservers. But seeing her in person is always a bigger joy and a bigger shot to my heart. And yoga is like that for me. I can't teach yoga online, and I couldn't practice yoga online. I have tried. I've taken classes online and been like, oh, this is no. For me, I'm an OCD detail person, and you can't see how someone's body is moving. You can't help adjust them if they are in a pose. If they say this hurts, I might be able to look and say, oh, here's why. Or, don't do that. You know what I mean? It's just, anyway. So then there's more than one story about a yoga teacher who kills people. It always made me angry on police procedurals and scripted shows that the yoga teacher, if there's ever a yoga teacher at a show, they're gonna be the murderer, because they're trying to make it where you're gonna be shocked and surprised that somebody is a killer and it's the yoga teacher. I'm just going to tell you, 99.9% of the human beings that I know that teach yoga wouldn't take the life of a bug. We've all taught classes where a bug or a pest has been there and we usher them outdoors. It's not in our makeup. It's not in our being, in our DNA. So this one bothers me more than most, and I think it's because I am without a partner at this point in my life. At a time in my life, I never thought I would be without the love of my life. And there is no relationship worth taking another person's life. And when you hear this story, not only will you agree, it's the most ridiculous. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing. I mean, every murder is terrible, right? But oh my gosh. So you may have heard about this story recently. It's one of those things that, and it made news all over the world because the murderer skipped town. It's really a crappy thing. So 25-year-old Moriah Wilson was a cyclist, but she wasn't just a cyclist. This is a 25-year-old woman. She was so accomplished. She had a bachelor's in engineering from Dartmouth at the age of 25. And she was raised in this family of athletes, that were obviously very passionate. And she was really into biking even as a young girl. And she was like a nationally ranked skier, but she had recently become sort of obsessed with what they call gravel cycling. And before she decided, to pursue a career in engineering, she thought, I'm going to try being a professional bike racer full time. And she had met Colin Strickland, who was a professional cyclist, which I'll be honest with you, I don't know how one makes a profession out of it, but I do know they're very, very competitive and ambitious. And I see where I live in Santa Clarita, there's a lot of, I would call them gangs, bike gangs who look like robots with the helmets and the shit. And I guess you make a living getting sponsors, maybe. Probably not Schwinn, but I don't know how that shit goes. So Moriah and Colin had dated briefly in fall of 2021. And that was because he had been broken up with his girlfriend, Kaitlin Armstrong. So he and Kaitlin had dated. They had broken up at the end of 2021. He briefly dated Moriah Wilson. And then he and Kaitlin Armstrong got back together. They, reconciled in January. So he and Moriah remained friends. Colin Strickland and Moriah Wilson remained friends. And he is very open and said, we maintained contact basically through text. Once or twice a month, we'd text each other. And that was pretty much it. Now, in the meantime, in the spring, he and Kaitlin Armstrong are having some issues. And they're, not exactly separated, but not exactly together. And in May of this year, of 2022, Moriah happens to be in Texas, where Colin lives, and near Austin. And they get together to go swimming and have dinner at a hamburger stand. She is in town for a race. That's it. She is in town for a short period of time for a race. It was like an accident that they are together and they found out that each other was in each other's, purview. They have a platonic swim at a public pool and have fucking dinner at a hamburger stand. And that's why she gets murdered. That is why Kaitlin Armstrong thinks I can murder her. And she really is, God, I feel terrible saying this. She really is pretty fucking stupid. So the timeline, especially in today, how do you, oh God. Okay, in today's world, I don't know how one does this. So the timeline of Kaitlin Armstrong's movements since she, murdered her boyfriend's platonic friend, May 11th, Moriah Wilson is found dead in the apartment of her friend in Texas. She was staying there because she was in town for this race. She had dinner earlier in the evening and a swim with Colin Strickland. May 13, Kaitlin Armstrong sells her Jeep Grand Cherokee after she's seen in surveillance footage outside the apartment where, Moriah had been staying. She gets a check on May 15th from a dealership for $12,200. May 14th, an anonymous police tipster, and here's where you beautiful people show how important you are, tells investigators that Kaitlin Armstrong flew into a rage after discovering that Colin Strickland had had dinner with Moriah Wilson. She's questioned by the police because she has an old warrant, and this could have been wrapped up 43 days earlier, but you know what? Things happen when they happen. So she is picked up on an old warrant for running out on a $650 Botox bill from like 2018 in Austin. And they release her as a mistake because the birth dates are different on the warrant than what is on her ID. But during the police interview, Kaitlin Armstrong says, yeah, it doesn't look good. When the cops point out, hey, look, your Jeep is seen driving past Moriah's friend's apartment where she's found later that night, dead from multiple gunshot wounds. So she's, released because they have to release her because of the birth date mistake. And she goes on the run. Now, she goes to upstate New York. She flies out of Houston and into LaGuardia. She stays at a weird camp hostel in upstate New York. And here's where this comes in handy. She is a very close resemblance look to her sister, which is how we think she got out. May 17th, her firearm is located at Colin Strickland's residence and was test fired. And police said, oh, it's got a significant potential to be the gun used to murder Moriah Wilson. She leaves Newark Liberty International Airport on May 18th after she's, driven from Camp Haven, where she was spotted, with her sister in this camp. And she's gone until June 30th, and she's arrested at a hostel in Costa Rica after a 43-day manhunt. So there is information about this case everywhere. Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, the Austin American-Statesman. But honestly, the best information I've gotten is from the dailymail.com. Really good, complete information, pictures, it's it's very interesting to me. So when the police confront her with the video evidence about her vehicle, she turns her head and rolls her eyes, being dismissive. And it's oh shit, I've been caught. That's how I would view it. They questioned her about Moriah Wilson, being with Colin Strickland. And, she's yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea, what you're talking about. So Colin Strickland is not innocent in this. He is, keeping text messages from Moriah Wilson away from the eyes of Kaitlin Armstrong. He has Moriah Wilson listed under a fictitious name in his phone. Now, here's the part I'm a little upset at. Colin Strickland, had purchased 2 handguns, one for himself and one for Kaitlin Armstrong. It's the search warrant at the house that he shared with Kaitlin that they found the one that belonged to Kaitlin, and it's a Sig Sauer P365, which bothers me because that's the gun I was looking at getting, which is recommended for women and their weird hands. And it's not compatible with California, so I can't get that gun. I can get a gun. I still haven't gotten one, so don't yell at me about getting a gun. So I passed my test. I can get a gun, blah, blah. I don't have one. So it does match with the bullets at the crime scene. There is an arrest warrant, issued for Kaitlin Armstrong, and she flees. So they, end up looking for her everywhere. Homeland Security looks for her. They, say that someone using a passport with a name that's closely associated with Kaitlin Armstrong, flew to Costa Rica. She takes a bus from San Jose, the San Jose airport in Costa Rica, and ends up, at this, beautiful area that is apparently St. Teresa, Costa Rica, which is apparently a lovely place to be. And this is terrible. It's quite often a getaway for Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen. Yeah, who cares? But that's sort of what made it popular. And she is on the run for 43 days. They're calling it plastic surgery. I don't know that apparently she had Botox in Costa Rica. She cut her hair. She changed the color of her hair. She was trying to alter her appearance. She tried to get a job teaching yoga so she could set up a life in Costa Rica. And I will tell you that a lot of yoga teachers host retreats in Costa Rica. I don't know if the price is great. I have no interest in going to Costa Rica. And even if I didn't kill anyone, which I think, I would not be killing anyone, it just feels like such a crappy thing to do. You kill someone, God, I have such a hard time with this shit. There's no good reason to kill someone unless it's self-defense. If sweet little Moriah, was charging at Kaitlin with a knife, maybe. I don't even know if that. I don't know. But she wasn't. They were just friends. Now, I'm a little more angry at Colin Strickland for hiding the information that apparently it turned out Kaitlin knew about. So he wasn't a good hider. So she's picked up on, after this international manhunt, she's picked up on federal charges for misusing a passport. And that's what they can hold her on until they can, file the murder charges. I think her next day in court is the 20th of July. So that would be this coming week. But, even if she comes up with the $3.5 million bond, she can still be held on charges because they're federal. And even something like misuse of a passport carries a penalty of 10 years in prison and a maximum fine of $250,000. So she's, apprehended June 29th, according to the U.S. Marshals, by public affairs officers. So she's captured June 29th by the U.S. Marshals, and, they bring her back to Austin, and she, won't talk. She's, facing first-degree murder charges. I just don't know how you're going to get out of something like that. I don't know how, I'll tell you, I think her family's in some shit too, because I believe that they had to aid and abet her. I mean, it's very similar to Peter Chadwick, but I don't know what they're going to be able to charge her with. But they, detained her on an immigration violation because she fraudulently used the passport of her, let's just call it sister, because that's what it is. And she finally, confessed to her true identity. But while on the run, she used aliases like Beth Martin, Liz Martin, Ari Martin, and she tried to get jobs teaching yoga at St. Teresa Beach. I just think that's kind of the dumbest thing, The dumbest thing you could try to do is get a job doing what you did. I don't know what sort of brain. I mean, she's a 34-year-old woman who murdered a 25-year-old girl, and not a 25-year-old girl, a 25-year-old bright light with a brilliant brain who was athletic and was living her life and not doing anything wrong, going swimming in a public pool and having a hamburger dinner with a guy you used to date. That's not a reason to be murdered, That's not a reason to be murdered. So apparently the clinic that did the Botox denies having information on her, but I'm sure that's because she used a different name. But apparently investigators found a receipt with her belongings that said she got work done in Costa Rica. I just, cutting your hair, dyeing your hair, and then getting, and then getting Botox in a short period of time, and then lying about your name during like a routine security check at a resort that you're staying at. It's like, wow. I mean, wow. I feel so terrible about this whole goddamn thing. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm still mad at Colin Strickland. There's an amazing picture of Moriah Wilson, and she is obviously a lover of life. And one of my favorite pictures of her is that she is biking, and apparently there was some mud. And it's a picture of this big, bright, beautiful smile and her sweet face covered in mud splatter. And she's just smiling. I mean, she's just a zest for life you don't see. So I feel so terrible for her friend. She was staying with her friend at her apartment in Austin, and she gets home at 10 p.m. and there's Moriah unconscious and bleeding on the floor from multiple gunshot wounds. The police performed CPR, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. And she is considered a world-class cyclist. And don't ask me how the hell Colin Strickland is a professional biker, but, I guess God bless him. Something else he did that was really kind of crappy. I'm just going to say this. He denied knowing Moriah when they first question him. Now, whether that was to deflect away from Kaitlin or whether he was worried that he would be considered a person of interest, because he was, you know, the only other person other than her friend that she was staying with, who I don't even want to mention her name. I feel so bad. Her name is also Kaitlin. So, you know, her best friend's name is Kaitlin. She's staying with her best friend, Kaitlin. And there's, you know, a picture. There's a video of Colin picking up Moriah from Kaitlin Cash's apartment at 5:45. They go swimming. They have a burger. And he drops her off at 8:36. And right after that, Kaitlin Armstrong, you know, shows up. And right after that, Moriah Wilson is no longer alive. Now, Colin Strickland sent a text to Kaitlin Armstrong after he had dropped off Moriah Wilson and said, my phone died. My phone battery ran out, and I was taking some flowers to our mutual friend. But here's another crappy thing. Kaitlin Armstrong is tracking both Moriah and Colin Strickland with a cycling app called Strava. And it shows the routes that runners and cyclists take. I don't know anything about the app Strava. I have seen some friends who post things on Instagram, on social media about their routes that they're, you know, working on. I think that's too much information to have. Not that anyone's going to be killed for it, but in this instance, you know, yeah, I can't even. Don't let people know where you are all the time, and don't kill somebody because they had dinner and went for a swim with your stupid boyfriend. I can't even write that. I can't. Yeah. So that is unfortunately what we have now. Until we know about her upcoming court date, I will give you an update. I think it's the 20th. And I can't. Colin Strickland, while she was on the run, left Austin because he's a chicken shit and, you know, said he couldn't sleep. He's staying out of sight because he was afraid she'd come back and kill him. And I thought, you know what, buddy? Look, I don't want anyone to be murdered. Maybe she should have come back and kneecapped you. Not with a gun. Maybe like a little Nancy Kerrigan action. I don't know. I really don't want to resort to violence. Sometimes I don't. Most of the time I don't want to resort to violence. But I feel like the wrong person was punished. And I'm not saying he needs to be punished. What I'm saying is that she needed to break up with him and get away from him, and they needed to let each other go. It was obviously an icky relationship. The way they, you know, there's things in the Daily Mail UK that you can find that show that it was a really codependent, icky relationship. And it just makes me angry that anyone is murdered over a dude. And I know it's much more than that. It's not just being murdered over a dude, but it's kind of being murdered over a dude. And it doesn't matter who you are, but someone as beautiful and full of life and full of promise, she could have done a lot of things physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Moriah Wilson was a pretty kick-ass 25-year-old girl. I didn't have my shit together at 25. I had a bachelor's degree in radio, TV, film, but I didn't have one in engineering from Dartmouth. And I sure the hell didn't want to be a professional cyclist. So, I mean, she was an amazing creature. And I feel like it hurts all of us when somebody does something crappy like that. Really crappy like that. So that's all we know for now. And I promise there'll be an update because somebody like, you know, Kaitlin Armstrong, how many ever years in prison she spends, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough for her to sit and think about the crap she did. The real shitty crap she did. I just don't think it's enough. But again, so if you have a case you want us to cover, please consider calling us at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can find us on any of the social media platforms. And I am so grateful for you, beautiful tipsters. And look at what a tipster did in this case. A tipster helped solve this case with the information that helped the proper authorities find her. So I am grateful to you, Tipsters, and more cowbell.